What's up, sports fans? This is the Lucas Ross Sports Channel. We continue here with my 2024 college football schedule preview and projected record series. Up next are the Ohio State Buckeyes before we preview their schedule for 2024 and give them an early projected record based off of how tough that schedule is. Let's take a look back at what Ohio State did in 2023. Here were my projections and predictions last year for the Ohio State Buckeyes. You see, my projection for them was 10-2, and then my prediction for them was also 10-2, but I was just one game off from getting their projections and predictions right from last year. Ohio State went 11-1 last season. Again, we're basing this off of the regular season in 2023, but if you want to count their bowl game loss to Missouri in the Cotton Bowl, this team finished last year with an overall record of 11-2 in 2023. Here was the schedule last year for the Buckeyes, and they had a pretty tough schedule in the non-conference with Notre Dame on there, on the road on September 23rd. Ended up winning that game, though, by 3 points. That was a defensive battle in that game. It really was about the defense last year for Ohio State. The offense really struggled last season in almost every single one of their games. They defeated Penn State. That was a key victory for them there on the schedule, but then they lost to, of course, Michigan on the road here on November 25th by 6 points. So they lost to Michigan here for the third consecutive year in a row. So Ohio State missed out on the Big Ten championship once again for the third straight year in a row, and they also missed out on the college football playoff last year after making it the year before. So Ohio State coming into 2024, maybe they can make a playoff run this year. Let's now look ahead to 2024 for the Buckeyes. Here is the schedule for Ohio State in 2024. Before we go game by game and preview each and every single individual game here on their schedule, let's take a look at who the Buckeyes will play in the non-conference. Remember, of course, no divisions in the Big Ten this season. You look at their non-conference schedule, and it's a pretty easy one. They got Akron, Western Michigan, and Marshall. All cupcake games here at home in the non-conference. No Notre Dame, of course, this year. No really big tests in the Power 5 in the non-conference either. So Ohio State has a pretty favorable non-conference schedule. This might be one of the easiest non-conference schedules in the country, in my opinion. So that's the non-conference schedule for Ohio State. Let's now go back to the original schedule here for the Buckeyes. So let's now go game by game and preview this schedule here for Ohio State. They will start things off here with Akron on August 31st, and then after that it's Western Michigan here on September 7th. They get a bye week here rather early in the month of September, and it comes, of course, before a non-conference game against Marshall here on September 21st. I don't think that's a really good spot for a bye week here if you're an Ohio State fan, but they will play Marshall here on September 21st. And the Buckeyes should easily start out 3-0 with all three of these non-conference games, to start out the year of 2024. Then they open up Big Ten play on the road at Michigan State here on September 28th. Then they get to the month of October. They will play Iowa at home on October 5th. Then there's that big game on the road at Oregon on October 12th. This is potentially going to be a top 5, top 10 showdown between these two teams, a college game day type game as well. Both teams are pretty even on both sides of the football. And this is not a non-conference game. It's officially now a Big Ten conference game here between these two teams, since Oregon is one of those newcomers in the Big Ten this season. And they do get another bye week here after that Oregon game, and then they play Nebraska here at home on October 26th. And then after that, there's that big game on the road at Penn State here on November 2nd. And it usually seems like they play Penn State every year in the month of November, perhaps, but that game will be on the road this year. A very tough place to play. Going to be a very tough one there for Ohio State. And then you get Purdue here at home on November 9th. Then it's Northwestern here on the road on November 16th. And then Indiana here on November 23rd at home. And then they close things out here with the game and the rivalry game with Michigan here on November 30th. So that's the schedule for Ohio State in 2024. When I look at this schedule, you do have really a good schedule here if you're the Buckeyes. You get Iowa at home, you get Michigan at home, you get Nebraska at home, but you had to play Oregon and Penn State both on the road. Northwestern going to be kind of like a trap game for this Ohio State team. Remember a couple years ago they did struggle against this Northwestern team on the road. That could very well play out this year in 2024. I think the Buckeyes do have a favorable schedule for them in 2024. Again, they do got a couple of tough road games with Oregon and Penn State on the schedule there, but that's the schedule for 2024. Let's now get a projection here for the Buckeyes for 2024. 2024. Again, this is not my official prediction. This is simply a projection based on how tough the schedule is. And this is the scale that I've been using here for my projections. If it's a 1% game in the red, these are games where the Buckeyes have no chance of competing in. 20% games in the orange, games where Ohio State will be about a couple touchdowns of underdogs. 40% in the yellow, about a heavy underdog, about a touchdown in that 40% range in the yellow. You're not going to see any of those percentages on here, though, for Ohio State in the red, orange, or yellow, and the percentages there in that category, because Ohio State's definitely going to be favored in almost every single one of their games. 50-50 games, though, they will stay in the white, games that can go either way. 60% games in the purple, about a touchdown favorite for Ohio State, and then 80% games, a couple of touchdowns in the blue. And then the 99% games, these are the easy wins here for the Buckeyes at 99% here in the green. So that's the percentage that we're going to be starting here with Ohio State for their projection. So let's start with the easy wins here for Ohio State at 99%. And I think you got 5 of them on this schedule: Akron, Western Michigan, Marshall. Those are your cupcake games. And then out of the Big Ten, you have Purdue and Indiana. So Purdue and Indiana, I think, are easy wins as well, just because Ohio State's playing both of those teams at home. Purdue obviously taking a big step back, with a first-year head coach last year. I don't really expect to, see much from the Boilermakers this year. Indiana is a team that's starting a new era. They're going to have a new head coach this year. I don't really know what to expect from the Hoosiers. I think that game is at least over 95%. I think all these games could be over 95%, to be honest. That Akron, Western Michigan, and Marshall games, those are all 95%, over 95% type games. Purdue game might be at 90%. I don't think Purdue, though, has enough talent to where they can, compete at least with Ohio State. So with all the 5 of these games, I think the Buckeyes can be favored by more than 3 touchdowns. And we count the green games as wins. So those are automatic wins here for Ohio State. So you have 5 wins here on the schedule here for the Buckeyes. Let's now go to the blue games. The games where Ohio State will be favored by at least a couple touchdowns at 80%. I got 2 of them on this schedule: Michigan State on the road and Nebraska here at home. So Michigan State on the road, with it being on the road, I definitely have to put this one in the blue. I don't want to put it in the purple, though, just because Michigan State, they're kind of like similar to Indiana, starting a new era down there for that program. They're trying to get back to where they need to be as a program as well. It is on the road. I know that it's a very tough place to play, but I think Ohio State is the more talented team, and Michigan State, like I said, has got a long ways to go before they can get back to where they need to be in the Big Ten Conference. Nebraska, I think, is a more talented team than Purdue and Indiana compared to last year. I think this is the reason why this game could be in the blue, but let's be honest, this was close to being a green game for me, but I think the future is looking pretty bright for Nebraska and Matt Rule. It's just those close games they cannot win. So yeah, Nebraska, I think, is a blue game here, even though Ohio State's at home. And I think you can favor Ohio State in both of these games by at least a couple of touchdowns. So those are the games where I think Ohio State will be favored by a couple here. And then we go to the purple games, the games where Ohio State will be favored by at least a touchdown at 60%. I got 2 of them on here at this schedule as well. You got Iowa at home and Northwestern on the road. Iowa's a pretty tricky one to make a percentage on. I was really close to putting that one as a 50-50 game. If it was on the road at Iowa, I would definitely still favor Ohio State. But if it was on the road at Iowa, it could be very close to a 50-50 game. I still think playing at home, Ohio State will be at least a touchdown of a favorite, because I think Iowa's defense is going to be good enough to where they can keep this game a low-scoring type game as of right now. But like I said, Ohio State is the more talented team, and plus playing at home, that's the reason why I'm going to favor the Buckeyes by at least a touchdown. Northwestern on the road. It's kind of like a trap game here for, Northwestern, like I just mentioned. Ohio State, struggled against Northwestern on the road a couple years ago, and you can kind of expect that struggle, to come around here in the month of November, especially when the month of November rolls around. There's a lot of upsets that happen, and I'm not saying that Northwestern's going to win. They do have a pretty good chance, though, to pull off an upset in this one, but going on the road at Northwestern, I think Ohio State will be favored by at least a touchdown. So those 2 games here in the purple, Iowa and Northwestern on the road, I think Ohio State will be favored by at least a touchdown. And then the rest of the 3 games on here that you're seeing in the white, these are pretty much 50-50 games. Oregon on the road, very tough place to play. Penn State on the road, another very tough place to play. And then the game here against Michigan. I know Jim Harbaugh just took the job at the Chargers, but I still think either way, it's a rivalry game. You never know what can happen. And plus, Michigan, I think, will still be that really good, talented team, but maybe not just this year. It probably will be a step back for them. They do lose a lot of talent from last year. year, so that does favor Ohio State a little bit. And also Ohio State brought in a ton of transfers from the transfer portal as well. So maybe this is their year. Maybe this is finally their year to snap that 3-game losing streak to Michigan. So these 3 games, again, Oregon, Penn State, both on the road, and then Michigan here at home. These are pretty much all your 50-50 games for the Buckeyes. Let's now get a projected record here for the Buckeyes for Ohio State in 2024. Again, this is not an official prediction. This is simply a projection based on how tough the schedule is. So we count the green and blue games as automatic wins for the Buckeyes, and then we split those purple games, average those out at 60%, and then we also average out the 50-50 games, split those 50-50 games as well. The overall projected record for Ohio State you get is 10-2 for 2024. So 10-2 comes out to be the projection here for the Buckeyes. I think they do split those 50-50 games. Maybe they win 1 out of those 2 games. Maybe the 2 losses come on the road, and then the win against Michigan comes here at home. I don't really know what to expect here, in these 3 games. I think that Oregon game is likely going to be a really a game that can come down to the wire. Penn State, we've seen them struggle against Ohio State in the past, a few years it seems like. Penn State fans are just hoping that this is finally their year to pull off an upset. But, that's a very tough game to call right there. Again, with it being on the road at Penn State, that's a very tough place to play as well. So Oregon, Michigan, Penn State, these are all 50-50 games. And again, the projection comes out to be 10-2 for Ohio State in 2024. So same projection for me as last year's was. Let me guys know what you think about this Ohio State team. Give me your best case scenario and worst case scenario down in the comments below for this Ohio State team as well. Thanks for watching this video, and stay tuned here for more sports content videos on my Lucas Ross Sports Channel.